Hi guys, welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to show you how I draw a sneaker in Illustrator. In this case, I'm drawing the Air Force One. And this is mainly to show you some methods and little tips to help speed up the process. So what I started with is the best, image you can find of whatever you need to trace or go off of. I put that in one layer and named it reference layer and then locked it. And then I created a new layer to create the sole because I like to separate my sole and the upper to two separate layers just for ease of construction. And I'm going to come here, double click the stroke box here, make it red just so it's easy to see, click the fill here, and then remove it. And then I'm going to proceed to start drawing the sole. So I'm just going to start tracing the overall shape of it because I want to show you how I kind of create these little grooves in a faster way than just making them individually. So right now, just quickly making the shape. And you can see how that I'm like clicking and dragging these points after I make a line. And that's because it helps me kind of dictate where the next, I guess, angle of the line will go. And to do that, you can press Option key if you're on Mac, which I am, and then just click and drag. Now, to make these little grooves, what you can do is, one by one, create them. But that takes a long time and life is too short, you guys. So what I'm going to do, actually, before I do the rectangle, I'm going to make a straight line up to where the toe lift happens, and then just follow the curve of the outsole. And for now, I just want to close off this shape because we need to do something with it later. And then if you have to come back and, slightly adjust, please do so. And a lot of times these lines are not straight on the bottom anyway. So I'm going to come here to the rectangle tool and then essentially just draw in what will be the gap. And then, you can individually make each rectangle, but that it could become inconsistent, and once again it just takes very long. So what I'm going to do is click the shape that I want to duplicate, and then press down Option, and then click and drag, and then while I'm doing that, I'm going to press down Shift, and that way it'll lock the direction it's moving. So once I do that, if I want to do it multiple times, I'm going to press Command D to just duplicate it. And as you can see, the spacing as it keeps going gets a little bit more wonky. So I'm going to come back, select them, and then I'm just using the arrow tools on my keyboard to kind of get them into the right place. Maybe I want them a little bit higher. And then once you have, a nice set of these, what I like to do is select all of them and then do the same thing again, but then it'll kind of batch duplicate, which, as you can see, saves a lot of time. And then for here, it's starting to kind of angle up, so I'm just going to adjust as needed. and then do one more. I'm actually going to add in the block size for this because I want to, first of all, select all of them, group them, and then duplicate them again because I'm going to need them to create these little shadows later on. But for now, this whole set, I want to right click and arrange to bring to front so they're on top of this shape. And then select both of them, go to Pathfinder, and then this minus front, like subtract tool, is going to create those grooves. So I'm going to click that. And as you can see, the little grooves are there. And sometimes they might look a bit strange, so you can actually use the direct selection tool to individually select each point and then, adjust if you need to. But for now, I will just leave this as is because we can always come back and kind of refine these things later. But for now, we're more focused on making all of the shapes for the shoe. So I'm going to come back here. Remember where I closed the shape off in the beginning? I'm actually going to use the scissor tool, which is hotkey C. Come here, delete that, and then come here and cut this as well. So these two are separated because specifically for this shoe, there is like a little lip, and then there's a stitch channel, and then there's the rest of the sole. So I'm going to first create the little lip. And you can see that I'm kind of playing around with how far I extend my pen tool depending on the curve. And I've just been doing this for a while, so I know I have a pretty good idea of like where or how far I need to extend. So I think it'll be good if you guys are really serious about, designing shoes and things like that, to just practice on your own and then figure out for yourself how the pen tool works best for you. Because I think with Illustrator and Photoshop, there's so many tools and there's so many different ways to do one method. So it's really just about you trying to find what is going to work best for you using the tools that you either have or know. Okay, so I drew those two sections of the sole, and I just changed the color of my line to blue just to show that I'm going to do the stitches in the sole, like so. And I'm trying to get them to be, roughly in the middle as best as possible. Okay, and then I'm going to select that stitch or that line in order to make a stitch. So if you go to the stroke box, I'm going to make it a little bit thicker by making a 2-point weight and then rounding out all the caps in the corners, and then click on dashed line, and you'll see that it creates a dashed line for me, but it's pretty short. So I'm going to maybe do 15 and 4, which is the gap or the spacing, and that's roughly where I want to be. I can also make it a little bit thicker, maybe like 17. Great. So then that's the stitch. It doesn't look super perfect, but we can always come back and refine it. And then I'm going to, because this section is kind of separate from the bottom section here, I'm actually not going to make any of the texture or the stars in this video, but just to kind of show that there is a separation. And this, it really is a separation in the mold for different textures and things like that. I'm just going to make a line and not close it, which 99% of the time you should close your shapes, but for this I will not close it. Don't at me. And then I'm going to finish making the details on this sole, so just making or outlining the Air logo. And then one little trick that, if you don't know, to make angles and circles is, instead of me tracing this like half circle for the R, which potentially could get a bit, messy, not super accurate, you can actually square it off like so. And then with your direct selection tool, select one point, and then you have to make sure that this line and this line are straight lines. If one of these is curved, then this little circle will not show. And then you click that circle and then you drag, and then it'll create a nice arch for you. I'm going to continue. And then for here, I'll do the same thing. Select both of these and do it at once. And you can see this is a bit weird, so I'm just gonna do that. And finish off this piece right here. Now, do you remember these little guys that we've been saving? So I wanted to see if this would work, because we have to basically make these shadows that these grooves make. And since they're already identically placed as the ones we made earlier, I'm going to place them on top of each step, make them a little bit shorter, and then remove the stroke color, press X so that this fill box is on top of the stroke box, because that means we're going to be using the fill. And then go here to gradient, and then press this gradient bar to activate the gradient. And you'll see each little box has its own gradient. We don't want that because we want to make a nice, like, subtle shadow. So I'm going to press G and then click and drag my mouse down. And depending on like the shapes and everything, you really have to play with if you're clicking just and dragging down, or clicking, dragging, like doing a little bit off path. Just have to see what works best for that shoe or that situation. But that's roughly what I'm going to do for now. And then I'm going to toggle the visibility so it's gone for now. Create a new layer, call that upper, and I'm going to start drawing the upper. So for the upper, I like to, depending on the shoe, kind of start with individual pattern pieces versus like drawing the whole shape and then going back in, because sometimes it's just that's not the fastest way to color and things like that in the future. So for here, I'm going to, actually, before I begin, I'm going to go to the layers panel and change the color to maybe dark green, just so you can see a little bit better against the red. So I'm going to come here and draw this pattern piece here. And because, like I mentioned before in Illustrator, it's all about layers. So this sole layer, when it's going to be filled in and everything with color, it's going to hide whatever is behind it. So this whole upper layer will eventually be underneath the sole layer. So that means instead of me finishing this piece by drawing exactly this sole like shape, I'm just gonna do that, and that's purely to close the shape. Now come here, do the swoop, and same thing here. Like I know ahead of time that this heel tab piece will be over. I mean, it physically is over on the shoe, but even just the way I'm gonna kind of build it out in Illustrator, it's going to be over the swoosh. So I'm not really too concerned about this area here. And then come in here. And the piece I'm drawing now is, if you can see, it's underneath pretty much everything, underneath this piece and the eye stage. So I just have to draw this to be exact and accurate, and then the rest of it will just kind of go underneath. I'm gonna quickly draw the eye stay. And because the laces are pretty much always going to be on top of the eye stay, I'm also not super concerned about the inside line shape of this eye stay. I just want to make sure it's like relatively straight, and then I'll just finish it off like that. And for this piece, it's also similar to this piece where it's going to be on the bottom of everything. So I'm just gonna do that. Easy. And then this back panel, I'm going to draw this shape exactly and then just do whatever on the bottom here because it's hidden. And then same thing here, it's hidden behind the heel tab, and then just finish off the shape. And this is going to be underneath the eye stay, so this part doesn't matter either. I'm going to draw the heel piece. And I'm not going to draw the embroidery in this video, just because I don't think I need to. For this video, I mean. Now I'm drawing the lining. And once again, the lining will be under a lot of things, so that's okay. I'm going to make the tongue. Make that little tab, and then make the binding. And then this shape is for the actual tongue itself. You'll see once I actually fill it in. And then you don't have to do this, but what I like to do is actually make a new layer for the laces, just because when you're coloring and things, sometimes it's it can get kind of annoying to select all the laces at once. So it's just nice to like have that control in order to organize your kind of work flow. So I'm just quickly drawing in laces. Now, if this was a sketch of a shoe, a lot of times the laces are drawn a little bit different, but because I'm tracing a real shoe, I'm just kind of tracing roughly how it's laced, and it'll just, you know, get the idea across. You can definitely go in and like, these kind of shadows and things, do all that, but for me, I don't think it's necessary. I'm going to select all of them, group them, lock the layer for now, and then go back to the upper. I'm going to make these little vent holes. And I'm just kind of adjusting them to the shape I need. And then duplicating, sorry, it's a hard word, duplicating them like I did for the little teeth gaps in the sole. Because with things like this, you want it to be accurate, but you don't want to spend like 3 hours drawing one shoe. I think that's just a lot of time that's not needed for these kind of CAD or for these kind of drawings. Unless it is really, really complicated, then yeah, justified. Anyway, I'm going to select all of them as well as these because they're all the vent holes, and then Command G to group them because trust me, it'll be easier when you need to like find them instead of clicking one by one. It's just accessible in one click. So lastly, I'm going to draw the stitch lines for all of these. And for you can do it freehand like for this one if you want. But what I'm going to do is utilize the offset path. So because this piece has double stitch, when I select this piece, go up to Object, Path, Offset Path, make sure to click Preview so you know how it's going to look like. And I use millimeters, even though this is points, just because the document right now, the measurement is set to points. But I like to do 1 mm normally for like one stitch. But you can see that it's not quite enough. It's a little bit too small. So I'll do 1.25 mm, see how that looks like, and that's a little bit more accurate. Do that and then click it again because of double stitch. Whoops. Offset path. Preview. And then I'm just going to double it. So negative 2.5 mm, and then there you go. And then I'm going to see if I can select multiple and then do them all at once. Looks like I can. So I'll do negative 1.25 mm. Cool. And this is same as the other double stitch piece. So I'll do 1.25 and then do offset path and then negative 2.5 mm. Great. So I'm going to select all of them, all the stitch lines we just drew. I know it looks pretty crazy, but you just have to focus. I'm going to just to show, change the color to this like dark blue. Go to stroke, and then because the dashed line settings was last used for the big ones, it's always gonna just kind of go off of that. But we don't want it this big, so I'm just gonna change this to maybe, let's see what 6 look like. Maybe I'll do like 5 with 2 gap. Okay, cool. And then you can see, because we offset path the entire shape, which means, as you can see, especially in this one, it's just kind of copying the shape, and we don't want that for the stitch lines. So I'm going to use the scissor tool and just come here and cut off the excess that we don't need to show, and then delete them. And then you'll, depending on where you cut it and how far you cut it, you'll just have to come in like this and slightly readjust using the, and if you're doing curves, using the direct selection tool option, clicking the points. And for me, I like stitch lines are the only, or one of the only few shapes that I don't close, because it's usually not a problem for me, and I don't think most designers close them either. And if it's really confusing for you, like here, you can always double click and it'll kind of isolate that, and then it'll kind of help you figure out like where exactly that stitch is. So you can do what you need to do like this. Oops. Do what you need to do, and then double click to go out of it. For this one, I don't need any of this stitch, so I'm just gonna cut, 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 and then delete. Bring this down, adjust it, and then lastly the same for this. I'm gonna isolate this because it's a little bit crazy. And then just do one more stitch here for the binding. Okay. I know that still looks a little crazy, but fear not. We're almost done here. So I'm going to start with the laces, change the stroke color to black, fill color to white. And then, actually before I do the rest of them, I think I'm going to select all the stitch lines and group them so that they're easy to access later on. So I'm going to select everything and then click the stitch lines so they're not selected. And as you can see, except that I didn't group them, it's easy and fast because I grouped them. And then eyedropper tool to the laces, so everything is filled in. And you can see it's still pretty crazy, but don't worry. So remember I mentioned that this will be on the bottom of everything. So what you can do is right click, arrange, send to back, and it goes in the back, so behind this layer, or this piece and this piece. What you can also do, if you don't want to send it to back, you can just kind of manually do it by pressing Command left bracket, and then just keep pressing until you land where you want to go or where you want to be. So I'm just going to do that for the rest of them, and then if you want to bring them up, you can do Command right bracket. For the swoosh, I'll bring it up. And then these stitch lines, I actually have to put them behind the swoosh. And at this point, you can ungroup, which is Shift Command G, the stitch lines, so that you can individually adjust them if needed. select all that, bring it to back. And then once you fill it in, you'll see sometimes you get like weird little points like this, so you can come back and adjust. Sometimes it doesn't show as much when it's just like a line. Or like here, it's not exactly lining up correctly, so you can do that, things like that. And whoops, I forgot to draw in this little back strip piece here. That's no problem. All right. I'm gonna adjust this stroke. Okay. And then for the vent holes, I'm just gonna press Shift X so that the fill is black, and then just remove the white stroke. And then lock the lace and upper. On the sole layer, I'm gonna bring it actually above the upper layer, so it's always on top. And as you can see, these weird, end pieces are underneath the sole. So what I'm gonna do is select this and this, fill it with white, fill that with white as well. And then, as you can see, there's an opening here, which I did not finish the sole. So I'm just gonna quickly make a channel like that. And it's easy because you just have to focus on the two end shapes here, because it's going to be on the bottom, and then bring all the way back. There it is. I'm going to make the stroke black, come in here and just, quickly adjust if I need to. Like the shape of this is kind of wonky, so I'll just do that. Arrange it like that. And then also make sure all the stitch lines on the upper are black. I should have done that when they were grouped, but here we are. You can also change colors here quickly. Oh, and you can see that this is above this, so I'm gonna make sure to bring down the stitch behind that piece. Cool. And then also make this line black. And what I like to do, like this looks okay, but I think if you wanted to make it look a little bit more professional and refined, you can start playing around with the line weights. Because right now it is currently 1, but if you do 2, it just kind of beefs everything up, which looks really nice and bold. Same with the sole. And then in order to contrast that, I like to make all the stitch lines just a little bit thinner than they are now. So right now they are 1. I'm going to make them maybe 0.75. And see, it's just it's a nice contrast between the thick and the thin lines. And then, you can come in here and see, this looks a bit weird. So you can always come in here and readjust everything. But anyway, here is the Illustrator vector line art drawing of the Nike Air Force One. It's not, 100% perfect, but this was more to show you how I do it and some of the tools and techniques that I've used in my career. So I hope that helps. Please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks. Bye.